in the 60s at a period of time when there was a lot of racial tension in the country, especially in Kentucky and the South. And I'm going to be 74 years old, and this happened 57 years ago. And I feel like it's an important story to put out there. And that's really why I've written this, to just let everyone know what happened, what did happen, and what still is happening in the country right now in regards to race and couples and interracial couples.
So take us through the genesis of this story. So it seems to be initially it was a love story. So how did you two meet and how did the love blossom?
Okay, well, I was a cheerleader, very popular in our very small community. There was only one high school, one movie theater, one main street. And we joined with the black kids in a separate area of town for high school. And so, as then as is now, there were a lot of black basketball players on the team. And I was always friendly to everybody. And he called me, and I had my own phone in the house. And so this black star basketball player called me, and we ended up starting a very secret relationship. There were rumors all over the town about me being with him, but no one confronted me about it. And my father was pretty powerful in the community. My father was in World War II. My mother was a war bride that came over from Germany to this small town. And we were never allowed to say anything derogatory about anyone in the family, in the town, or anything. It was, brought up with a lot of respect for people. But my father found out that, or heard the rumors, and he had police car friends radioed following me. And that's how ultimately I was caught with James. We used to meet in the cemetery. He lived back behind the cemetery, and we used to meet there, and that's where our first encounters were for a while. And so my father caught me with him on July 26th, 1969. And at that time, um, he came up to the door, and it was in an area of town in the South, I'm going to say it, that was called Bucktown. And it's a derogatory comment, especially now when you hear it. And that's where James and the Black community lived. So my father had come into that specific area and came up to the house where we were and knocked on the door and was screaming for me to come out. And so I told James to run. So he ran out the back door of the house, and I went to the front door, and my father grabbed me and threw me down the concrete stairs. It must have been about 10 or 15 stairs. The woman he was having an affair with spit on me. And then my father got me in the car and drove me home to our family home. And after that, he tried to, I'm telling a lot of the story here, but he tried to kill me. He choked me. Um, I was put in a psychiatric ward for a week. James was having his life threatened at that time. and was in hiding. I found out later on. Um, there was a whole day of trauma. We lived in a cul-de-sac. People were driving by our house one by one, looking to see what was going on. There were rumors my body was in the funeral home. I mean, it was really big. Relatives were coming over telling me how I'd shamed the family. And there's so much more than just what I'm throwing out there right now, but so much more. But you can get a sense of the trauma that was on me as well as James with this incident, this love that we had for each other, this young love. He just happened to have a different color skin.
When you look back on that and you're sharing that powerful story, the moment it was found out that you two are having this relationship, looking back, what kind of emotions were you experiencing?
Wow. Okay. Well, I absolutely knew at that moment when my father was at the door. Tremendous fear of my father. I mean, we were brought up, spoil the raw, raise, spoil the child. We were whipped with a horse whip for a while. We were, yeah, spare the rod, spoil the child. That's how it was when I grew up in the 50s and 60s. There was a code too that you don't let anyone know what's going on behind closed doors and what will the neighbors think. So all of that was, encompassing this whole scene that was going on. I'm sorry, you asked me about how I felt. Fear, um, especially when I opened the door and I saw the rage that my father had. And at that point, there were people all around the neighborhood that were standing outside watching this spectacle. Um, and I think I was shocked because I never really thought that they would react that way. Yeah, I thought they might be upset, but I never ever thought that would happened on the level that it did. I mean, the police came to take the guns away from my father. Relatives came and said I'd shamed the family. And my father, it's it's a crazy story. My mother tried to slit her wrists. I mean, it is really, it's all in the book and it's all true. But this memoir is also about forgiveness. It's about forgiveness as well, which, if you don't forgive, then you just hold on to all of this, all of your life. And I think it harms you more than anything.
When you mentioned forgiveness, were you looking for, when you mentioned forgiveness, let me rephrase that. Is it forgiveness of yourself or forgiveness of your father or forgiveness of someone else?
I forgave my father later on in life. I mean, I was sent away after I got out of the psychiatric ward. I was sent away my senior year to a Catholic boarding school in North Carolina for bad girls. So I was sent away for that last year. Actually, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. I felt bad for James because he had to stay in the community, but he did ultimately. One of the white basketball players that I'm still in contact with made a comment that he thought that he became a better basketball player after that because he had so much more to prove because He was poor. He couldn't leave. He couldn't be sent away to some other school, you know? So, but for me, it was the best thing that ever happened to me to be away from that. I hated my parents. I really hated them for what they did. And do you know that in 1968, Martin Luther King was shot. So there was a big fight in the school, okay, that occurred. And in 1967, Kentucky still had interracial marriage laws on the book that were illegal. And this was 1969 when this happened with me. And there was also the case in 1967, the Loving versus Virginia. I don't know whether you remember, it was the white guy and the black woman that married, and they were taken out of their home and arrested for being married because they were an interracial couple. There was a movie made about it a few years ago. So, I mean, this was 2 years removed from when all of this happened with me and James. So, it's kind of when you think back 57 years later for me, when I think back at this, I I can't believe it that that was really occurring like that, and that had just changed.
What do you think James was going through during that time?
Oh, that poor guy. You know what? I have so much empathy after I writing this book. Thought a lot about him. I think he got on a roller coaster that he could get not he couldn't get off. I think he was scared for quite a long time from my father. Um, but it's really interesting about young love. You're ready to prove that somebody was wrong and they were wrong. And so we went off to college and started writing each other after all of that went down. And ultimately ended up secretly living together for about 9 years.
So even after all of that, you two still maintain contact and still connected.
We were living together. We were
How
living
was
together.
that? Like, how was that experience living with him after some of these events that happened for to the two of you?
Well, it's interesting. We kind of lived in the Black community. We went to the bars in Louisville that were, in the Black community. We mainly spent our time in the Black community. So, I mean, we were kind of comfortable. I have to say that I don't believe he ever really dealt with any of it. He was very private, he was very quiet. I've had 16 years of therapy, so I'm feeling pretty good. But I've got to tell you, I know for a fact, because I know someone that just saw him. I haven't seen him since 1981. He lives 10 miles from me, amazingly. I don't think he ever dealt with any of it. And I think what ultimately happened is that we had so much to prove that we were going to make it. We went through all of this. We drove out from Kentucky and we were driving. It was 1974. We left Kentucky and we would go through Arkansas and they would not serve us gas because we were an interracial couple. So we would plan then so that I could hide in the back seat and I would cover myself because, attendants did it then. You didn't go and get your own gas back then. So I would hide so that we could get gas to get to the next location. And then when we'd go to a hotel along the way to California, we would have to, I had a credit card, so we would go in and I'd get the room and we'd pick a hotel that had an outside area to go to walk in. And so we'd hide the car. I would go in and then he would come in when no one was looking. I mean, this is what we dealt with. So, when you go through that with someone, it's like, you think you're going to tell us we can't be together? We'll show you. But what happened was we weren't really a good couple together. And
Even
we,
though you two were able to go through so much together, ultimately, there always has to be something more than the pain and the trauma that keeps people
exactly,
together, right?
you're exactly right. And there was infidelity on his part. And he was at that time, and I don't want to say he is now because I don't know, because I think everyone can change. He was alcoholic. So my father was alcoholic. So I kind of, did this codependent, jumping over to that. And I think if no one would have ever made a really big deal about us, I think we would have found out much sooner that we were not suited. It had nothing to do with color, that we just weren't suited to each other. Um, but we were never given that opportunity. So we were together 12 years and then divorced.
I think that's some of the problems that relationships face is that when they're surviving together,
Hmm.
and a lot of things that attracts those two people is that they're surviving together. I
Yeah.
have your back, you have mine.
Yes. Yes.
When you're not surviving together anymore, you're like, oh, so Andy, what's your favorite
What
color?
is right?
Right? Like, why do
Right.
we like each
Yeah.
other? Because you begin to learn about
Yeah.
each other now that you both are thriving or just not in survival
Yes.
mode,
Yes.
right? Even though you two were together for a long time,
Uh-huh.
and during that time, because I'm 40, so that's a number of years before I
Yeah.
was
Right.
born, and I
Right.
see some of the things going through it now. How strong do you think people would need to be to face those situations, either back then or even in some degrees today?
Well, first of all, back then, depending on where you lived, it was, I know people here that go, "What? I mean, we were born when you were, and we don't even understand that." So I think it depended the part of the country that you were in, how it was perceived, so to speak. I'm not saying it was fantastic in California because there was a time when it was never good for the Black community, you know. But and I think now there statistics show that a white man and a black woman have a much more successful interracial marriage than a black man and a white woman. Actually, it's in the book. It's from this, yeah. So, these days, I mean, actually in our neighborhood, there's mixed couples that are younger that probably don't have any idea, what happened. And I don't know whether they're dealing with much of it at all, but I do know that James never really felt comfortable being with me, even on the West Coast. He never really wanted to hold my hand in public. He wouldn't eat watermelon or fried chicken around white people. I mean, so I think that he was dealing with his blackness, but having a difficult time, possibly because of me. And the roller coaster he got on with me and my father and all this crazy stuff. And we were just 16. And if you're not able to process that, it's got to affect you emotionally in anything that you do. Um, and I've been lucky that I have been in therapy 16 years and so I have a lot of empathy for him. I really do. And people change.
Do you think sometimes we forget how difficult the other person can do you think sometimes we forget how difficult the situation can be for the other person because we don't understand maybe their point of view?
Absolutely. Yes. And if the other person is not able to communicate how they feel and their feelings, then it's hard to get past that, you know. It's hard to deal with that. It's hard to have a relationship like that, you know. There were times when he just wouldn't talk to me. And I remember I'd be in the kitchen slamming the cabinets, because he would kind of shut down. He would shut down. Whether he does that now with his current wife, I have no idea, and I don't know whether it just all had to do with that whole crazy thing we went through. We were together quite a long time and we married, you know, and but it wasn't meant to last. And it's like almost like after we got married, it was like, okay, it's over. My father knew about it. I called my mother and father and said, I had been doing this for 9 years and I'm being out in the open and I'm not living like this anymore and I can't do it. And so everyone knew. And then it was kind of like, wow, everyone knows now. So what do we have here? What are we working forward to now? But, it just kind of, I think their relationship possibly deflated then because we weren't just on this path to prove we were right and they were wrong.
What role do you think maybe, if any, shame and guilt played for both of you back then for your relationship?
You know what? I've got to tell you, I did not feel shame. A situation like this can do two things to a person. It can just break you down, and you can be in yourself and be depressed and never move forward. Not me. I fought. I was like, I'm going to be strong, and this is not going to define me and, affect my life in a bad way. So I didn't really feel shame. Now, my family, I think, and all my relatives felt like I shamed the family, but I never felt that. I don't know about James. I mean, I don't really know. I mean, like I said, he didn't talk that much about his feelings. So, I wouldn't say he felt shame. I just think he was just, like I said, on my powerful white father's roller coaster that we just were, like a rat in a cage that's running around. I mean, that's where we were. We were constantly moving.
There's times where if I look at myself, I've dated women that weren't from the same culture, same maybe background as myself.
Yes.
Canada, where I'm from, is a little different than America. It's more similar to how California is now, where
Yeah.
everyone gets along with everyone at this point,
Right.
right? But one thing that I did notice that from other people, from their perspective, is that they didn't feel shame about the relationship that they were in. But when it came to guilt, which was a little bit different, they felt the guilt that maybe they're letting their family down because there's so much chaos in the family because of something they want to do.
Good point.
So I'm just wondering then that you cannot feel guilty for your relationship, but you can feel
Right.
guilty for maybe the drama, the chaos you're cause drama, chaos in your family that's an indirect, or in some cases, a direct result of your behavior.
That's really a great point, and I'm glad you phrased it that way. You know, my older and younger sister have not read the book. My older sister said she did not want to speak ill of the dead. So my parents are gone. I didn't even attempt to write this book until they were passed. Because, like I said, there was forgiveness. There was no point in that. My younger sister, who was 8 years younger, who was locked in the bedroom when all this crazy gun stuff and choking and everything was going on, was very protective of my father and mother. And so I think she resented me for bringing all of this in the family when she should have been the focus then at that point. And also, I will tell you that she was not allowed or not invited to pledge the sorority in the town because of me. So, it did affect the family. And actually, sadly, until this day, we don't talk about my book at all. I'm not, and my sisters and I are so close. We are so close. However, this book is never mentioned at all.
Why do you think it
So,
is?
huh?
Why do you think it's not mentioned?
Because I don't think they want this story to be out there because it has to do with our family, our parents. And I'm sorry. It's my story and it's what I went through. And my older sister, I mean, when they found out that my older sister knew that I was with him, they didn't let her go to back to college in Florida. I mean, she was cast out as well, so to speak. She lost a lot when that happened as well. And my younger sister, who's 8 years younger, she just, so we don't talk about it. They know it's out there. They both ordered the book, but they've never read it.
I recently, not recently, about a year and a half ago, lost my grandmother. She's the one that raised me. I didn't know my mother and my father growing up. And I contributed a chapter in a book, a little bit different than yours. And I shared some skeletons in my family's closet. And similar to you, they may have supported the book, but it's like it didn't even happen.
No.
I'll give my money, but
Yeah, don't
if I
talk
read
about.
it, don't talk. But if I read it, you're not even going to get any feedback. Is good
Don't talk.
job. That's it. And it's interesting that no one's family is perfect.
No.
Some are closer, some are much farther from that bar,
Yes.
right?
Right.
But it seems that when it comes to certain things in a family, they will admit, maybe one on one or even to themselves, that the behavior is wrong,
Yes.
but they will never try to resolve it.
No. No. And there's nothing you can do about that. I mean, my mother, get this, my mother and father never said one word to me about what happened to me on July 26th, 1969. except my father, even though they knew I married him and everything. And, my father, one day when I was at his house in Kentucky, looked at me and he said, and I was in my 50s, and he looked at me and he said, what happened, you know, that long ago? He said, that should have never happened. And I was shocked. And I said, yeah, you're right. That should have never happened. Only time anything in my life did they say anything about that day and what happened to me. It
Why
was
do you
like
think
the code, man. It was the code. 50s, 60s. You don't talk about what's going on. You kind of pass over it, ignore it. It just, I don't know. It's crazy.
why do you think your father was able to express regret how he acted about your relationship, but maybe some of the women in the family weren't?
Well, my mother was European. So she was brought over in this small town where Germans and were not looked upon very well. It was right after the war. There were only two German women in the town. Actually, my mother is full Polish, but she was born in Germany. So she met my dad there. So I think, she didn't want to draw any attention to any of us, because she was trying to lay low because of, being from Europe and the war and everything like that. I don't really know. I mean, it's a good question. I talk about this in therapy still to this day. And my therapist says, I can't believe it. Whenever anyone says anything about your father, you take up for him, and I don't understand it. And I said, it was the way I was raised. And I said, I forgave everyone. I just forgave everyone. I
What, for those who are, let's say, dating someone that's either different skin color, different cultural background, different religion, and who are experiencing something similar to you, where it takes bravery to stand up for the love that they want to stand up for because that's love is important to them. What maybe advice would you give them to continue to be courageous in such ways of adversity when it comes to challenging the love they have for someone that is different than the way they look?
Well, I think first of all, you have to evaluate what's going to happen and what you're able to give up. So, you know, with religions and everything, a lot of people, you've got to look at it. Will you still be able to be involved with your family? Will religions work together, and I think you just have to evaluate the situation and know what you're getting into and think about what you want to give up or what you want to keep. And I mean, it's hard to say, love can be very strong, young or old. And I mean, love does not cure all. You have to really look at the whole picture and figure out for yourself in the situation what you can deal with and what you can't.
And that's the challenge for a lot of families, right? Like you have a lot of families, they'll say that, well, the love in this family is unconditional
Yeah,
until someone that's different than them walks through the door holding their child's hand.
exactly.
Then all of a sudden, conditions that maybe you were aware of on a unconscious level or subconscious level, or you weren't aware of.
Yes, right.
And I knew a family that two daughters to husband and wife. I spent a lot of time with that family, and they married someone that was, I think it was different religion, if I remember correctly. And their parents had a fit, and the two daughters, um, they did a separate point, but the older daughter, she made a choice. She said that I can marry this person and not have my family support me and maybe not have a relationship with them, or I cannot marry this person and the status quo. She chose to end things and
Uh-huh.
not be with that person.
Uh-huh.
At the time, it was a decision that she made with some thought and she thought it was the right decision. Unfortunately for her,
Uh-huh.
that choice lingered and it started to eat at her.
Yeah.
And she started to view her family differently until the point where when she did get married to someone that treated her well, same religion, in this case, instead of a different skin color, same religion, she moved in, no contact with the family.
Oh.
So even though she made a choice to maintain the family, ultimately she still made a choice later on in life that led her to remove herself from the family. And I think some people struggle with that because we put our parents on the God throne. They could do no evil. They're perfection in our eyes. But
Yes.
eventually, I think we have to understand that they put their parents on one leg at a time like everybody else.
Exactly. Yeah. That's really a good point. Um, I have, I don't know, it was a long time ago for me, and but I have since, I'm pretty tough. I'm a pretty tough cookie. I've been told that. My current husband says I'm a hard ass. Uh, but Yeah, I mean, my current husband actually is Jewish, which is just hilarious. So I still didn't go the uh, the other route. I know my father used to laugh about that. Um, it's complicated, and that's why I thought it was just, it was such a I needed to release this. I needed to let it go. And it took like 3 years to write this book. I had a ghostwriter and I would do, Zooms and for hours and brought up everything. And I had this box full of all these scrap, things from the paper with the basketball team. And I had like 40 letters from James that I kept from when I was 16, and I reread everything, and it really pulled me back in that time and made me look at it even a little differently, you know, and thought about this little girl that and him as well. But now I'm like, well done, Annie. You did it, girl. You survived and you wrote a book. Hopefully, if someone wants to read it, it'll help them a little bit and figure out a path for themselves if they're in a troubling time or with family and trauma and race and interracial, whatever. You know,
So let me ask you now that you are remarried, what's something that you have learned about yourself today that maybe kind of surprised you considering what you've gone through?
what I've learned about myself today. Well, I've been with him, my current husband, for 39 years. Um, I did sort of do a codependent thing again. So I think it's very important for people to realize how strong that codependent thing is when you're very young. If you have a parent who's an alcoholic or, whatever. So um, I can kind of continued on that path. So with the three most important men that had ever been in my life. But it's all changed and it's all different. And I've just amazed myself really how strong I am. And the way I feel about things and my convictions and just I I don't know. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, but I forgot the question sort of, but I'm just kind of thinking about, you know, um, how I've progressed. I'm amazing. It's 16 years of therapy. I'm I'm doing really good. I'm going to be 74 in a couple of weeks and and I'm very excited that at this point, this late in my life, that I've been able to release a lot of things emotionally. So I'm feeling pretty good about myself now.
Did you ever think that you wouldn't find love again?
Oh, yeah, I went 5 years after James where I married 5 years after we were together. Yes, I think so. I think I did at one point go, okay, whatever, get it together, girl. You're gonna be alone, get the job thing all together, get your money, get your. So yes, I think I did, and then it just sort of happened. And I did fall in love again. Not the same kind of love, though, as that young, forbidden love. That's different.
No two loves are ever the same.
Right, right. Yeah.
Let me ask you, Annie, one final question before I let you go.
Okay.
You mentioned courage, you mentioned resiliency. And this question, I want to give you three wishes so you can share with our audience what are three things you wish they would know about this. So, what are three things you wish people knew about finding love later on in life and why?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Uh-oh, I feel like I'm in school. Wasn't that good talk? Okay, so, all right. Say it again. Say it again. So I'm
Absolutely. So, what are three things you wish people knew about finding love later on in life and why?
okay, finding love later on in life. Um, I think it's I think falling in love later on in life, you have a lot more maturity. Think you're more realistic about what you're getting into. I think you're more aware of flaws in relationships. Have this idealistic view of what marriage and a relationship can be like later on. And I think that was what happened with me. I just think I was able to view the relationship in a different way, healthier way also. Um, but like I said, not that young love. That's like we were talking about. Loves are different because I was 35.